On what seemed like a peaceful evening in 2011, alarm bells began to ring at a local 7-Eleven store. Reports of an armed robbery flooded the local police department. But upon arriving at the scene, the suspect had vanished. After expanding their search, police reportedly heard sounds coming from a nearby house. Without any other clues, they stormed in and discovered a known heroin addict sitting inside with a gun. Without any other evidence, they arrested the man and took him in for questioning. That addict was Jeff Pearson, the alleged perpetrator of the robbery. And what unfolded next went down in history as one of the few times a single man beat the police at their own game, all while going through horrific heroin withdrawal. This is what happens when the suspect outsmarts the cop. The next 24 hours were recorded by police cameras in the interrogation room. But contrary to most similar footage, this footage was initially uploaded to the suspect's own YouTube channel on September 25, 2011. This was the first sign of what made Jeff an iconic figure and a legend in the interrogation community. Right now, you will witness an in-depth lesson on the methods police will try against you and how to evade them like an absolute expert. Jeff was detained for nearly a day, but all the footage from 3 interrogations barely totaled 15 minutes. With the robbery and arrest taking place in Georgia, the usual minimum sentence would be around 10 years in prison, potentially up to life without parole. But astonishingly, Jeff wouldn't spend a single minute in prison, and instead of serving decades behind bars, he spent a day being served drinks and candy while demonstrating a masterclass in what to do when in police custody. Jeff Pearson's story is not just a criminal case. It's a deep study of human endurance and the power of personal legal knowledge when facing extreme pressure. So, what allowed a man struggling with addiction to hold his ground and defeat seasoned investigators? What rights did Jeff exercise to overcome the psychological traps set by the police? And more importantly, what can we learn from this case to protect ourselves in a complex legal system? We will delve into each round of interrogation, analyzing police techniques and how Jeff Pearson turned that pressure to his advantage, exposing flaws in interrogation methods and proving that sometimes silence is the strongest voice. On that fateful evening, an alarm call about an armed robbery at a 7-Eleven store prompted immediate police response. But when they arrived at the scene, the suspect had vanished without a trace. The search was expanded to the surrounding area. It was during this process that police reportedly heard unusual sounds coming from a nearby house. Without any other clues leading directly to the robbery, they decided to act quickly and stormed into the house. Inside the house, police found Jeff Pearson sitting there along with a gun. Jeff was known to be a heroin addict. Based on what they found, a drug addict with a weapon in a house near the robbery scene, police quickly arrested Jeff. It's worth noting that at the time, they had no other direct or specific evidence linking Jeff Pearson to the 7-Eleven robbery. The decision to arrest Jeff seemed more based on speculation and initial prejudices than on concrete evidence. From an investigative perspective, police often face immense pressure to quickly identify and apprehend suspects, especially in serious criminal cases like armed robbery. When clear evidence is lacking at the scene, they may rely on indirect signs and the suspect's record. In this case, Jeff, being a known expensive heroin addict, may have led police to immediately connect him to the robbery, even though no witnesses saw him at the 7-Eleven or any other physical evidence besides the gun. This illustrates a potential pitfall. Rushing to initial conclusions can lead to focusing on the wrong person or overlooking other possibilities. The decision to storm into a house without a clear search warrant or direct evidence of a crime in progress shows the pressure police face. They were looking for an armed robber, and every unusual sound could be a clue. However, this action also carries legal and ethical risks, especially if the suspect is later proven to be unrelated to the initial crime. Furthermore, Jeff being a known heroin addict created an initial prejudice against him. In criminal psychology, individuals with a history of substance abuse or a criminal record are often more likely to be considered suspects by police in property-related crimes, as it's assumed they have a motive to obtain money to support their addiction. This prejudice, while not always wrong, can lead investigators to overlook other possibilities and focus too heavily on one individual, especially when evidence is scarce. The lesson from this phase is the danger of over-speculation and initial prejudice in criminal investigation. While time pressure and safety are real, relying on inference without concrete evidence can lead to wrongful arrests and unfair interrogations. This is why the American legal system emphasizes the importance of individual rights when arrested, and Jeff Pearson, a man who seemed to be at a disadvantage, understood this better than anyone. With his arrest made without clear evidence, Jeff Pearson was taken to the interrogation room. He was handcuffed, dressed in a prison jumpsuit, and struggling with withdrawal. But from that very first moment, Jeff showed he was not an ordinary suspect. He would begin a psychological battle with the police by using the most powerful weapon any American citizen has: their rights. Jeff Pearson, handcuffed in a small, windowless interrogation room, had completed initial processing and likely spent some time in a holding cell. Clearly, the police had taken time to gather evidence and prepare questions. But from the very first moment he faced the investigators, Jeff showed a sharp mind and an understanding of the American legal system that few suspects possess. He didn't panic or bow down. Instead, he took the initiative. Jeff immediately asked, "Am I under arrest?" A key question. And when confirmed that he was under arrest, he continued to demand, "I'll explain everything, but before I explain myself to you, if we'll talk to each other, I need to read your rights, okay?" These are actions legal experts always advise citizens to take in this situation. If you are not arrested or detained, you have the right to state that you are not obligated to stay and answer questions, and you have every right to leave the interrogation. If you are arrested, you can immediately request a lawyer and remain silent until a lawyer is present. These choices give you the best opportunity to stop police interrogation and build the most effective defense. Interestingly, in the U.S., when you are under arrest, the police officer has a legal obligation to remind you of these rights. Those are the Miranda Rights. The detective read Jeff his rights. The rights remain silent. Anything you say will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to the lawyer for advice before he questions you. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer and you want one, a lawyer will be a provider for you if you decide to answer questions now. That lawyer present, you'll still have the right to stop answer questions anytime. Does that make sense? You probably heard these before, haven't you? These 3 points are extremely important and are often overlooked by ordinary citizens due to the panic of being arrested. Furthermore, because we hear these phrases so often in media like movies and police shows, most people completely ignore them when their rights are read and don't realize they are being given useful information to stay safe and protected while in police custody. However, what this detective didn't mention is that if you ask for a lawyer while under arrest, they are not allowed to continue questioning you, and you have a complete, unquestionable right to refuse to answer any questions they may ask until you're provided with an attorney. The detective even ended the reading of rights with a sarcastic remark about Jeff's past, aiming to subconsciously remind him that he was a convicted criminal. "Do you understand your rights? Do you understand your rights, Jeff? Yes or no, you understand? We're getting paid more than you are, so we can sit here for a long time, man. I just need you to answer me yes or no. Do you understand your eyes? Let's get through that question. Do you understand what I read you? Do you comprehend what I read you?" In the interrogation room, police try to create a controlled environment where they have power and the suspect is at a disadvantage. But Jeff regained control by skillfully using his knowledge of his rights. He didn't just listen, he processed the information and immediately applied it.
The important lesson here is that knowledge is power, especially in the legal system. Understanding your Miranda rights is not just a formality, it is a shield that protects you from coercive interrogations and the risk of giving a false confession. Jeff Pearson, a man who seemed to be at a disadvantage, proved that even in the most unfavorable circumstances, knowledge of one's rights can be the ultimate weapon, and Jeff chose to use that weapon immediately. With Jeff having requested a lawyer and firmly remaining silent, the first round of interrogation turned into a psychological battle. Police would try every trick to break his will, but Jeff would prove that silence can sometimes be the strongest voice. With Jeff Pearson having requested a lawyer and asserting his right to remain silent, the first round of interrogation turned into a tense psychological battle. Although police had begun the process, it was clear Jeff was not an easily manipulated suspect. He demonstrated a clear understanding of his rights, which forced the officers to change tactics. The lead detective tried to apply a familiar psychological tactic, creating a false, comfortable atmosphere to hide anxiety. He leaned back in his chair, trying to appear unconcerned with Jeff's silence, implying they could sit there as long as they liked. This is a technique often used to pressure suspects to talk, making them believe the police have ample time and evidence. However, such body language usually indicates some form of unrest, revealing the detective's underlying restlessness. With Jeff having requested a lawyer and firmly remaining silent, the first round of interrogation turned into a tense psychological battle. Although police had begun the process, it was clear Jeff was not an easily manipulated suspect. He demonstrated a clear understanding of his rights, which forced the officers to change tactics. The lead detective tried to apply a familiar psychological tactic, creating a false, comfortable atmosphere to hide anxiety. He leaned back in his chair, trying to appear unconcerned with Jeff's silence, implying they could sit there as long as they liked. This is a technique often used to pressure suspects to talk, making them believe the police have ample time and evidence. However, such body language usually indicates some form of unrest, revealing the detective's underlying restlessness.
Jeff Pearson, with his experience in the system, saw through all these tricks. He knew that police wouldn't sit there if they had enough evidence to convict him. So Jeff chose the most powerful weapon, silence. Jeff has been explicitly told he has the right to remain silent, so that's exactly what he's deciding to do right here. His silence was not confusion or fear, it was a deliberate act, a perfect defensive strategy. If you got something that says you didn't do this robbery, this is your chance to talk to us, okay? Good. By saying nothing, Jeff forced the police to show their cards, to reveal the level of evidence they had. Jeff's silence caused the detective to begin losing his composure. He tried to provoke Jeff with sarcastic remarks, even attempting to assert his dominance. No, usually I'm the prick. You look like the brick I am. If it's dominance we're talking about, Jeff's took everything the cops had and dumped it in that garbage can. However, Jeff held his ground. He adamantly refused to cooperate and repeatedly asked, "Am I under arrest?" "Yes, you're under arrest. Get me back to the cell. I don't talk to you blah blah blah, okay? Enough." He knew that police had nothing concrete other than his presence there, and they wouldn't be able to hold him without more information. The lesson from this first round of interrogation is that silence is sometimes the strongest voice in the interrogation room. In this first round of interrogation, Jeff exhibited exactly the correct behavior given his current circumstances. He knows the cops have nothing on him. They wouldn't be there talking to him in the first place if they did. So he stays silent, and so it's off back to his cell he goes. Firmly remaining silent and requesting a lawyer can prevent police from extracting information from you. It forces them to rely on factual evidence, not coerced confessions. The first confrontation ended with a clear victory for Jeff. However, the police did not give up easily. 2 hours later, Jeff Pearson was brought back to the same room, but this time the officers would try a different tactic. They would try to exploit Jeff's physical weakness, using his heroin withdrawal as a tool to psychologically manipulate him and force him to talk. After 2 hours in solitary confinement, Jeff Pearson was brought back to the same interrogation room. This time, the police officers changed tactics. They no longer tried to appear cold or provocative. Instead, they sought to exploit Jeff's physical and psychological weakness, the horrific heroin withdrawal he was enduring. Upon entering, the detective offered Jeff a can of Coke, a seemingly kind gesture, but part of a sophisticated tactic. "You want a Coke?" Jeff accepted, but immediately he didn't hesitate to state his condition directly. "I need methadone." "You need methadone?" "Yeah, you have method?" "I don't have any." "Do you have a medication for it? Or, a prescription for it?" Jeff was asking for methadone, a legal prescription drug used to significantly reduce the symptoms of heroin withdrawal, including the terrible cravings he might have been experiencing throughout his time in police custody. Methadone, the drug Jeff asked for at the start of this conversation, can be used to significantly reduce the effects of the withdrawal. It can even reduce the cravings he's also probably been experiencing for the entire time he's been in police custody. Police were well aware of Jeff's condition. Refusing to provide methadone to someone in pain from withdrawal is a cruel pressure tactic. They were trying to push Jeff into a state of desperation, where physical discomfort could weaken his will and make him more susceptible to manipulation, ultimately leading to a confession for release from pain. For the last few hours, the police have been questioning a man who is clearly in pain, denying him access to the legal prescription drug that would help him deal with his issues, and questioning him repeatedly on a crime for which they have no evidence for. The detective continued to try to build rapport, asking Jeff how long he had been using heroin. "How long you been using heroin?" "Long time, buddy. 10 years? 15 years? I hardly been alive that long." Then they moved to a direct accusation, but with a seemingly helpful tone. "Look, here's the deal. Either you're in a bad set of circumstances, or you committed an armed robbery last night." This is part of an interrogation technique aiming to create a false choice, making the suspect feel they have an escape by confessing. It was here that we see the police applying elements of the so-called Reid Technique, a 9-step interrogation method developed to extract confessions. One of the main techniques used in these interrogations is the Reid Technique developed by a former cop and psychologist in the 1960s after he extracted a confession from a man accused of murdering his own wife. This technique begins by setting up a polite discussion about why the suspect is accused, then uses body language and actions to imply guilt, and concludes by offering 2 choices to the suspect, both implying guilt. This method is particularly effective at extracting false confessions from innocent suspects. This method forces the suspect into a corner and is exceedingly good at extracting false confessions from innocent suspects. In fact, the original case that technique was formed around fell apart after discovering that the man in fact did not kill his wife and was tricked into giving a false confession. Absolutely. However, Jeff Pearson demonstrated his extraordinary sharpness, overcoming physical pain. He adamantly denied all accusations. "Yeah, I'm in a shitty, wrong place at wrong time. Obviously, I didn't commit no shit armed robbery." More importantly, he saw through the police's intentions. "You're not my friend. I'm not your friend. You're trying to get me. All you're trying to get is some stupid-ass confession, and you're not going to get one." This statement shows Jeff understood that the police weren't interested in the truth, but only wanted a confession. "I'm not going to get a confession out of you for nothing." Exactly, because I didn't do nothing trying to get a confession out of you, okay? He even challenged them. "I'm going to tell you I ain't commit no armed robbery, and y'all ain't got no shit evidence saying I did. Let me go." The lesson here is that even in the most vulnerable state, a sharp mind and resilient will can resist coercive interrogation techniques. Jeff did not let withdrawal pain cloud his judgment, but instead used his experience to expose the police's intentions. He understood that police had no evidence, and all their efforts were aimed at forcing a confession. Jeff knew misspeaking at any point could lead him down a slippery slope, so he exerted his rights in the perfect way. The second round of interrogation ended with Jeff still refusing to confess. Police were slowly running out of options. Time was passing, and the pressure on them was increasing. In the next round of interrogation, they would no longer maintain sophistication, but instead resort to more desperate tactics. But Jeff Pearson would prove he was still one step ahead. As Jeff Pearson remained steadfast in his silence and unwavering against psychological tactics in the second round of interrogation, the police began to show desperation. Time was their enemy. Without further evidence and no confession, Jeff could soon be released. In this third round of interrogation, the officers abandoned their initial sophistication and resorted to cruder tactics, almost outright threats. The detective tried to pressure Jeff by asserting they had enough evidence. Here's what the deal is: I have enough evidence. But when Jeff asked what that evidence was, the detective evaded, unable to provide any specific details. Like what of the armed robbery? Okay, but if you're saying you didn't do it, you need to give me your side of the story. I didn't do it. Okay, well, give me your side of the story. You got me and convince me, because I got a lot of evidence. I got a lot of physical evidence. Like what? Name. Why should I tell you there? This was a clear sign of weakness. If they truly had a lot of physical evidence, they wouldn't need to sit there talking to Jeff. When sophisticated interrogation techniques fail, police often fall into a state of desperation, leading to the use of more coercive tactics. They began to threaten with fabricated or exaggerated evidence, hoping to scare the suspect into confessing. The detective even tried to deceptively bargain with Jeff. "There's only a couple pieces of evidence I'm missing." "Not even." "What's that?" "Name. Why I need to do that?" "You haven't helped me out at all. You give me a little bit, I give you a little bit. We go back and forth. I give you one of my piece of evidence, now give me a little something. All right, what time you get over to Aaron's house?" This offer went even further. "Anything you say here, I can also tell your parole officer that you helped me out." This was a worthless promise, aimed at exploiting Jeff's fear about his criminal record and past. Police were trying to trick Jeff into believing that cooperating would benefit him, while in reality, any statement would be used against him. The detective is desperately trying to bargain with Jeff. If he helps the cops out, they'll put in a good word with his parole officer. But Jeff immediately realizes that means absolutely nothing. What does a gold star mean if you're stuck in prison for 20 years? Jeff immediately realized that a gold star or a good word with his parole officer would mean nothing if he faced decades in prison. Although police continually violated Jeff's rights by continuing to interrogate him after he had repeatedly requested a lawyer, Jeff remained unfazed. He repeatedly reiterated his rights and exposed the police's desperation. Jeff has asked for a lawyer, yet they're still sitting there questioning him as if that's not a blatant violation of the rights that they have read to Jeff on 3 separate occasions. This showed Jeff's deep understanding of the law and his tenacious will. He knew that time was running out for the police, not for him. They know that if they don't get anything out of him soon, their time will run out, and Jeff is watching the clock closely for the next 4 minutes of the interrogation. Jeff continues to deny and combat anything the police say to him. In the final 4 minutes of the interrogation, Jeff continued to deny and combat everything the police said. They tried to use the gun found with him to threaten, even trying to scare him with the prospect of returning to prison without medication. They bring up the gun that he was found with, continue to try and strike a deal, and even try to scare him by taunting him with what being back in prison would be like and without any of the drugs he's grown a dependency to. But through all those words, Jeff maintained a stone-faced demeanor, an astonishing calmness, showing he knew he was very close to victory. The lesson from this interrogation round is that desperation can cause investigators to violate legal and ethical rules, but a resilient suspect who understands their rights can still resist. Jeff Pearson did not let the police manipulate him. He turned patience into his weapon, waiting until the police's time ran out. The prolonged interrogation forced Jeff to struggle with physical pain from heroin withdrawal. However, he faced both psychological and physical pressure extraordinarily, which further highlighted his iron will. And that resilience would lead us to the final moment of this story, where Jeff Pearson's fate was determined. Throughout those tense hours of interrogation, Jeff Pearson not only faced psychological pressure from the detectives, he also endured a much fiercer battle within his own body: heroin withdrawal. Officers had repeatedly interrogated a man who was clearly in immense pain, refusing to provide him with the legal prescription drug that could help alleviate that pain, and continuously questioning him about a crime for which they had no clear evidence. Heroin withdrawal brings horrific symptoms: muscle spasms, nausea, diarrhea, cold sweats, tremors, and intense body pain. This is a state that, by itself, can cause an ordinary person to break down. Yet, Jeff faced all of that with astonishing calmness. For the last few hours, the police have been questioning a man who was clearly in pain, denying him access to the legal prescription drug that would help him deal with his issues, and questioning him repeatedly on a crime for which they have no evidence for. Jeff Pearson's ability to endure both psychological and physical pressure to that extent is extraordinary. Jeff has handled this like a complete normal man, asked for sodas and chocolate bars. It shows an iron will and astonishing self-control, perhaps forged from harsh life experiences or from a strong survival instinct. For someone going through withdrawal, maintaining focus and clarity not to slip up even once, which could lead down a slippery slope, is extremely difficult. Jeff knew misspeaking at any point could lead him down a slippery slope, so he exerted his rights in the perfect way. From a psychological perspective, this could be a form of hardened mind, where past painful experiences have built a higher tolerance threshold than normal people. Or it was absolute focus on a single goal: escaping this situation and not confessing. Every time the detective tried to use his condition to pressure him, Jeff calmly evaded, even turning it into jokes, like when he asked for snacks like candy or soda. This case also raises a serious ethical question about police conduct. Refusing to provide methadone, a legal prescribed drug to alleviate withdrawal discomfort, while continuing to interrogate someone in extreme pain, could be seen as a form of coercion. This goes beyond the bounds of tough interrogation and closer to psychological and physical torture to obtain a confession. An important lesson for the justice system: ethical boundaries need to be maintained, even when facing a suspect.
Jeff Pearson's resilience, facing both the storm within his body and the psychological attack from outside, is a testament to the indomitable human will. He proved that, even in the worst circumstances, the right to remain silent and knowledge of the law are the strongest shields. After many hours of struggling in the interrogation room, victory was within Jeff Pearson's grasp. The tense battle of wits had come to an end, and the result would prove that, sometimes, the seemingly weakest person is the smartest. And Jeff Pearson's fate, an addict accused of robbery, would take a completely unexpected turn. After many hours of struggling in the interrogation room, enduring both psychological pressure and intense physical pain, Jeff Pearson finally achieved what he wanted. Police had failed to break him, unable to obtain any confession. Their time was up. Without enough solid evidence to charge him with the robbery, and with Jeff adamantly exercising his rights, after nearly a day in custody and interrogation, something unexpected happened. Jeff Pearson was released. At the time, for a person suspected of armed robbery and with a history of drug addiction, to be released from a police station without being charged was almost unbelievable. It was a resounding victory for Jeff, a man who proved that knowledge of the law and tenacious will can be the strongest weapons. After 12 hours, he was noted to be released from the detention center and went on his way. However, Jeff Pearson's story doesn't end there. Even more astonishing is what happened after his release. According to reports, from that moment on, Jeff embarked on a journey to change his life. He quit heroin, escaping the cycle of addiction that had plagued him for years. It's also been reported that Jeff has since started changing his life. He has gotten off heroin and now spends his time uploading to the same YouTube channel that this footage was uploaded to.
What prompted this radical change? Perhaps the extreme experience in the interrogation room, when he directly faced the risk of losing his freedom and the pain of withdrawal, became a turning point. It could have been a powerful shock, forcing him to reevaluate his life and the choices that led him down that path. Jeff knew that misspeaking at any point could lead him down a slippery slope, so he exerted his rights in the perfect way. His success in overcoming addiction and the police gave him a new purpose, a sense of capability and autonomy he may never have experienced deeply before. Not only did he change his personal life, but Jeff also began to use the very YouTube channel where his interrogation footage was posted to share his story. He started making music and even offered useful advice on how to avoid police tricks. He makes music and even gives extra tips on how to avoid the police's tricks. This shows that Jeff transformed his negative experience into a positive tool, helping others better understand their legal rights and how to protect themselves within the justice system. Jeff Pearson's impressive comeback is not just a personal story of redemption, it also transformed him into a symbol, a legend in the interrogation community. He proved that knowledge of one's rights can be the strongest shield against pressure. And that legacy, along with the profound lessons from this case, will be what we analyze together in the final part.
After being released and deciding to change his life, Jeff Pearson was not merely a lucky person who escaped prison. He became a symbol, a legend in the community of people concerned with citizen rights in the interrogation room. This is the first sign of what makes Jeff a cult figure and a legend within the interrogation community. He proved that even an individual considered to be the most disadvantaged in society can stand firm under the pressure of the justice system, if they know how. Jeff Pearson did not keep his story as just a personal experience. He turned it into a powerful educational tool. By uploading his own interrogation footage to his YouTube channel, Jeff directly exposed the tactics police use. This garnered significant attention, turning his channel into a valuable resource for anyone wanting to learn how to protect themselves during an interrogation. He makes music and even gives extra tips on how to avoid the police's tricks. Jeff's advice wasn't just empty theory. It came from real-world experience, from a confrontation he won. He explained in detail how police will try to psychologically manipulate you, pressure you to talk, and how silence, firmly requesting a lawyer, and not being tricked by empty promises can save you. Jeff knew misspeaking at any point could lead him down a slippery slope, so he exerted his rights in the perfect way. Jeff Pearson's case is a powerful lesson in empowering citizens legally. It emphasizes that knowledge of your rights is an impenetrable shield when you face law enforcement. In a system where a confession can be the strongest evidence, knowing how to use the right to remain silent and the right to counsel is paramount. What this detective didn't mention, though, is that if you ask for a lawyer while under arrest, they are not allowed to continue questioning, and you have a complete, unquestionable right to refuse to answer any questions they may ask until you're provided with an attorney. Jeff proved that even if police try to violate your rights by continuing to interrogate you after you have requested a lawyer, inappropriate conduct, your persistent reiteration of that request and refusal to answer will make your statements inadmissible against you in court. Jeff has asked for a lawyer, yet they're still sitting there questioning him, as if that's not a blatant violation of the rights that they have read to Jeff on 3 separate occasions. This not only helps protect individuals, but also promotes transparency and accountability in the justice system. The lesson from Jeff is a profound reminder. In the interrogation room, the police's goal is to gather information, and your goal is to protect your rights. Never forget that you have the right not to say anything that can be used against you. Jeff Pearson's legacy is not just the story of a man who escaped prison. It's the story of the power of knowledge and the resilience of the human spirit. In this final part, we will summarize the profound lessons from Jeff's case, examine its long-term impact on his life and others, and deliver a final message about the importance of self-protection in the legal system.
Jeff Pearson's story is not just a thrilling true crime case. It's a profound lesson, a wake-up call about every citizen's rights in the criminal justice system. Jeff proved that even when facing extreme pressure and sophisticated interrogation tactics, knowledge and resilience can be the most powerful weapons.
Jeff Pearson's psychological profile shows an individual with astonishing acuity, an iron will, and the ability to adapt under pressure. Despite struggling with withdrawal and serious accusations, he maintained focus and never strayed from his goal of self-protection. Jeff knew misspeaking at any point could lead him down a slippery slope, so he exerted his rights in the perfect way. This resilience is a testament to the strength of the human spirit when facing adversity. Jeff's case is also a clear reminder of the potential dangers of coercive interrogation techniques, especially the Reid Technique. This method, developed in the 1960s, though considered effective at eliciting confessions, is also notorious for potentially leading to false confessions from innocent suspects. This method forces the suspect into a corner and is exceedingly good at extracting false confessions from innocent suspects. In fact, the original case that technique was formed around fell apart after discovering that the man in fact did not kill his wife and was tricked into giving a false confession. Absolutely next-level gaslighting. Jeff Pearson's story is a vivid example of how an innocent person can be pushed into a difficult situation and coerced into confessing if they don't firmly grasp their rights. Jeff Pearson, once an unknown drug addict, transformed his painful experience into a meaningful legacy. He not only changed his life, quit heroin, and pursued music, but also became a valuable resource for others. Through his YouTube channel, he shares practical advice on how to deal with police and avoid pitfalls in the interrogation room. He makes music and even gives extra tips on how to avoid the police's tricks. The biggest lesson from Jeff's story is the paramount importance of understanding your legal rights. Always remember your Miranda rights, the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. The rights remain silent, anything you say will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before he questions you. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer and you want one, a lawyer will be a provider for you. If you decide to answer questions now, that lawyer present, you'll still have the right to stop answer questions anytime. Does that make sense? As Jeff proved, firmly exercising these rights can protect you from unfair interrogations and coerced confessions. This is what happens when the suspect outsmarts the cop. Jeff Pearson's story is a call to action. Empower yourself with knowledge. In a world where the line between truth and manipulation can be very blurry, knowledge is your best protection. It allows you to stand firm even when facing the greatest pressure and ensures that true justice is served. The dramatic story of Jeff Pearson and his psychological battle with the police has concluded. What did you learn from Jeff's resilience and legal knowledge? Share your thoughts and advice in the comments section below. If you found these true crime plus psychology analysis helpful and want to explore more stories about criminal psychology, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss upcoming videos. Thank you for listening.